Right, I think we're live. And welcome to this Facebook Live about Sláine, Kiss My Axe. So we just see the screens coming. That's it.
Should we expand the window?
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah. Sláine, the Warped Warrior, the Secret History, Kiss My Axe. I'm very aware, before I continue, that this is, of course, competing with Doctor Who. So we're not expecting very large figures at the moment. We're hoping that there might be an influx after Doctor Who is over in, about 50 minutes' time. So,
Can you keep talking that long?
Can I keep talking that long? I think you know the answer. So, what shall I talk about? Okay, so, well, first of all, the different editions. So this is the paperback edition from Amazon, and it's $11.99. There's a Kindle edition from Amazon, $4.99. It's about 340 pages, so it's a bit bigger than the Be Pure book. It's also available as from Get My Comics. The standard edition is like this, same price, $11.99. And there's also a signed bookplate edition, which had this image in it, for $14.99. Now, humble apologies, the printers are screwing up, as printers inevitably always seem to do, and so it's running about for about 2 weeks after, so it's about 10 days before we think the printers will be delivering, and then it'll go straight out to everyone. So it's going to be a close run thing for Christmas, and I can only apologize about that. You know, this is to everyone who has pre-ordered the book from Get My Comics. And as a sort of apology and a compensation, there's a free online edition so you can read it online.
For everyone who's pre-ordered.
For everyone who's pre-ordered. So they should have an email about that, and it's available at a Get My Comics site called The Cove, and there's the instructions on how that's done. So that's all the what you might call all the sort of important stuff to get out of the way, and maybe I should come back to that later for people who are joining us later on after Doctor Who. But in the meantime, I was going to mention that I had some artwork up in my loft for 20, 30 years. And I've only seen these pages for the first time after 2 or 3 decades, which is a bit scary. The first page is one that many of you will be familiar with, which is the wonderful page by David Pugh, that warp spasm page. And what it says at the top in pencil is, "To Pat, with thanks for unleashing the serpent in me, David Pugh." So I hope you can see that okay, that particular page. And yeah, I mean, it looks as wonderful to me as it did in the comic. So that's that page. And the other one came as a complete surprise to me, because I'd forgotten it was there, which was Angela Kincaid's first drawing of Akko. So here you're going to see it for the very first time, her original study of Akko, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And also a creation of one of her Droon Lords. She had 2 basic designs, so I would guess that the other one is one with the kind of tree horns or something of that sort. And written on it, it says, let's see, Slough Om could look like this, or the other version. I'm, it's too long ago to know what I'm banging on about there. But I think that's it's a lovely image of Akko. So there we go. And we're going to do a printed off low-res copy of it afterwards. So
a digital copy.
Digital copy, yeah. So you can see. You can sort of see it in more detail, perhaps. I mean, just looking at it, her Akko is fantastic, and also I think her Droon Lords, which I talk about in Kiss My Axe, how important her designs were, and how important it was that everything that she created was embodied in episode 1, because the story of Kiss My Axe was not a particularly happy one there, where there was a definite attempt to what shall we say, marginalize her as a creator, which even after all these years still pisses me off, which is why I'm going to have a glass of wine just now.
They're talking about how the art's in really good condition, David Pugh's art, particularly, and then someone says they always thought that Akko was pronounced Ukko.
It possibly should be pronounced Ukko. As I mentioned in the in the book Kiss My Axe, I mentioned how I got the name Akko. Well, obviously, with my mind, you could imagine it would be Akko.
Look at me.
It's a sort of Finnish god, I think, originally, and I thought this is a great title, because obviously it's got "fuck off" included in it. So I'm not so easy with. Was it Ukko?
Ukko. And also Dorian is here.
Right.
And
hello, Dorian. Hi.
Slough is pronounced slough.
Well, I always saw it as like a serpent sloughs its skin. So that's how I saw these. They'd sloughed their humanity. I think that's how the name came about. So I'm not so sure about the slough, but
no. Juan says, "What does the writing say?" I don't know if that was on the Angela one.
On the Angela one, it says it's up here. It says Slough Om could look like this, or the other version. Now I can't remember whether I thought the first Droon Lord that featured was called Slough Throt, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was Slough Om, I don't know. Just by the by, this skull cap here was because I think I was quite influenced by Excalibur, and the Merlin there has a skull cap, which I think is superb, and I think the Merlin is in Excalibur is way ahead of Gandalf and so on, but I probably shouldn't say too much about that for Lord of the Rings fans. Back to Akko. He was originally, in my early scripts, he was Finnish, and one of the reasons for this was because the Finnish words for a god warrior is bogatur. And so he was endlessly saying "by the bogs," and as you'll know, I think it's one of the, certainly one of my hallmarks, and probably 2000 AD at the time, that you have all these kind of catchphrases and so on. And I kind of missed a trick there, because if I kept it that way, it's imagining, you know, 8-year-old kids running around in the playground saying "by the bogs" and all that kind of stuff. But I eventually decided that the mythology was becoming so involved and so Celtic that it would have been a bit much to, really get into the whole Finnish and Russian side. So I kind of played it down, but I did bring it back with a Sláine story by Chris Weston, where Akko's disreputable past catches up with him, and someone from the northern wastes tracks him down. So, and I think I wrote that story. I can't remember. I think I wrote it after the last major Sláine saga by Leo Manco, who did such a fantastic job on it. So the book really traces the whole story of Sláine from that wonderful episode 1 by Angela all the way through to Leo Manco's story, and it kind of for me, looking at Leo's artwork, it was just so impressive that I just thought, you know what, we've got to go out while we're winning, because Sláine's had some of those peaks and troughs where everyone's expectations after Bisley were really high, and we fulfilled them for a while, and then depending on who you listen to, the standard may or may not have gone down. And I thought, you know what, we can't go through this again. Let's go out at the top. I hate it when a character is just milked endlessly, and I think it's best to go out while we're winning. And so that's what we've done. And I feel a pang at leaving Sláine behind, but what can I say? To do another major Sláine serial, it's really almost a victim of its own success, because it would take 6 weeks of development, because Leo really likes to interact, and so that would take up probably, let's say, around 2 weeks. And then there's, say, around 4 weeks of plot development, pursuing, when you come up with a new direction and a new angle, each story's got to be a little bit better than the last one. I don't like these kind of, movies where whatever it is, so-and-so 2 or so-and-so 3, and they're just not a patch on the original. So you just got to keep the standard up. And I think there would have been problems there. And for example, I think Leo's color is wonderful, but I think his black and white is even better. And I would actually have liked that last one to be black and white, which I think aesthetically would be the right thing, but commercially probably makes more sense to be in color. And I wouldn't really like to take a further look at Sláine and and argue with everyone concerned about what's going on. I think it's sometimes better to say, okay, I'll get my coat and I'm out of here, because I think as I get older, I get more purist, and I'm less likely to compromise and say, well, sod it, if that's what the editor wants, I'll put up with it. I won't do that anymore. And that happened actually quite recently. I thought, I'm not really on the same page as this guy, so fuck it, I'm just not going to do it. And I think that's really how all of us as creators should be, in order to get the best possible product, in other words, where we're going. Let's take another swig of wine and get on to the next element in all this.
I have
There's no
some-
questions.
No, there are questions.
Oh, tell me. I thought they were all
Someone-
watching Doctor Who.
Someone
Yeah.
asked if I could speak a little louder or get closer to the mic, but I explained I was feeling slightly peaky, so I was hovering in the background. I won't talk too much. There's a lot of questions and comments. What aspects of the Christian Brothers influenced Sláine? That's from Steve Greenaway.
Oh, we could be here all night on that. Quite a lot, really. I think, I mean, obviously, the Terminators in Nemesis are very inspired by the Christian Brothers, or the De La Salle brothers, actually, as they're known. And the Droon Laws are actually cut from the same cloth. And as an aside, I actually just won on behalf of myself and many other old boys of the De La Salles, just won quite an important victory where they got so fed up with my media campaign, they've just kind of thrown in the towel, and they've said, they've asked the police to investigate all the numerous allegations against them from St. Joseph's College old boys. And so that's one down and another one to go. So I'm quite pleased about that. And it does show the power of social media, that you don't put up with shit from people. And when things have gone wrong in the past, they have to be addressed. And of course, when they weren't being addressed, it was coming out in Nemesis and in Sláine. So in particular on Sláine, you have it here with this scumbag Droon Lord, and I think I've described in many of the stories that they're wearing these filthy fur robes, and they don't want to eat fresh meat. There's a scene in Mick McMahon's Sky Chariots episode where he says, I don't want fresh meat, bring me something old and decaying. And all of that is really designed to show how repulsive, these Christian brothers, De La Salle brothers, were. The only good side to that, of course, is that they're a great source of inspiration, because as a writer, you've got to write about something. So if you have if you had a normal education with normal, healthy, secular teachers and so on, you wouldn't have Nemesis and you wouldn't have Sláine.
It says its broadcast is waiting for a signal. I don't know if that's me receiving it or you sending it. Does yours say anything there?
Mine says live.
Okay.
So all is well with me.
Back. Okay. A couple of other things. Lord of the Rings and you are inseparable to me. I was reading 2000 AD and playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it goes on to say 2000 AD kept me sane through my parents' divorce. I was 10,000 miles away. Is that right? 10,000 miles away in Africa. It reminded me of home. So that's really nice.
That is so nice. Thanks, Steve. Well, we brought into Sláine the whole Dungeons and Dragons element, as you know, and I go into that in Kiss My Axe and talk about the that whole D&D era, and we did well with Dice Man and with the Dice Man Sláine stories and so on. They were popular, but I think we'd come in a bit late. The whole Livingston Jackson thing, who was maybe a year or two earlier, and IPC didn't put that much energy behind it. I don't know. I mean, it worked, and we did 4 issues, and then they just said, well, let's not bother with any more. And maybe in a way, it was probably a good thing, because I was probably going to become more, what should we say, in a way that all writers do. They, you start to see who they really are after about the third or fourth issue. So in my case, you were seeing things like You Are Ronald Reagan. Firstly, because I wanted to work with Hunt Emerson. But secondly, also because I wanted to get some of this political stuff out of my system. But I suspect that from a Dice Man reader point of view, funny as it was, that probably wasn't really what they were looking for. I mean, it did lead to You Are Maggie Thatcher, and this was right in the middle of her era. So I did this book, and I think it worked pretty well as a book. So.
Okay, Jim Taylor, were you ever considering branching off with Kai? I felt that was the way it was going.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Maybe just repeat the question a bit in case no one can hear me.
Yeah, just in case anyone couldn't hear Lisa there, because she's feeling a bit...
My weak vocals.
She's feeling a bit frail today. It was whether stories were going to spin off in the direction of Kai. And I think that was my intention. And it didn't happen for two reasons, really. One, when we started introducing him, I don't remember getting any particular interest or feedback from the readership. And that might have come through. I mean, if you look at, for example, Judge Dredd, when Chopper turns up, I think that had an immediate impact, and rightly so. Here's this kid who's challenging this this fascist, and but with Kai there wasn't the same thing, and I think the reason for it was that Sláine himself, I was really drawing on my Irish Celtic heritage. And so, although I thought the same inspiration would come to me where Kai was concerned, it didn't really happen. I sort of, in other words, the muse wasn't driving me. And that's one of the things with Sláine. It is a muse-driven story. And again, I really come into that on the book. And it's almost scary how far the muse drove me, because I thought initially, oh, okay, let's do a story where I can sort of get into my whole Irish heritage and try and make sort of connections with that, which are actually particularly important. Any of you who are Anglo-Irish will know what that means, because you're Irish, but you're kind of disconnected from the Emerald Isle, unless you happen to live in, Kilburn or something, and you know the Pogues or what have you. So that was really important for me, and I found I was really starting to connect with all kinds of aspects of my Irish culture that I wasn't fully aware of when I started. And that led me at the culmination of the book, and I won't sort of spoil the surprise of how it works. It's a bit like a whodunit. There were three possible contenders for my biological father, so it actually is a kind of whodunit, really. So I won't say which one. Once I actually found I did a DNA test and discovered the most likely contender, which is it's quite weird actually discovering this kind of stuff at a fairly advanced point in your life, and when everyone's dead, so you can't really say hey we've got things to talk about, everyone's gone. But once I had discovered who my biological father was, that actually kind of pulled the rug from under me in a way. I would say that was more a reason why I ended Sláine than anything else, because it took away the kind of motive. So all this goes back to Sláine, to Kai, because if there was something I really needed to say, and I couldn't say it through Sláine, maybe I could have said it through Kai, and I could have kept the saga going, or said, well, I've got more to say. And it's kind of strange in a way, because I left Sláine at a high point, namely, he's got this whole world created for him, the world of Brutus. There's the city of London, the dragons of London. So there's a very rich world created, with this kind of idea that the original London, or New Troy, as it was actually known in legends, is all there waiting to be further covered. And I've been assured by Rebellion that the story ends with me, so that's good. But I've also made it very, very bloody difficult in case at some future point anyone goes back on that and some hungry hack tries to take over. They'll find it very, very difficult, and that difficulty is deliberate on my part. By having the story meander this way and that way, and adding this and that, it makes it a very personal story. Probably like most other classic 2000 AD stories, like who in their right mind would carry on writing Halo Jones after Alan, or writing Zenith, after Grant. So I think it's the way to go, that you impose your own signature on the story. So it really makes it difficult for the hacks to try and do it. And they are out there, and there's people who don't give a fuck about the morality of it, and even naming and shaming them probably wouldn't matter. So you've always got to keep that in the back of your mind. So anyway, that's my rather long and convoluted answer on Kai. Sorry about that. What's next?
Okay, I'll try and speak loudly here. I've gotten a bit closer to the microphone. I'll just give you a couple of comments. Joshua Scott, hi Pat, the hero's death has been avoided. Eternal Rebel, very nice. Matthew Ellis did ask what wine you're drinking. I've already told him.
I wondered.
And yes, the video will be available to view later on YouTube, because it has frozen a couple of times. So Joshua also says your bad guys are really disturbing, a real threat. Let's see. Kieran O'Gorman says, ever thought of Sláine meeting Scota the Witch? Is it Scota?
Yeah, he's absolutely right. Yeah. That is the correct pronunciation. I'm impressed because...
No, he said it. I pronounced it correctly. S-C-A-T.
Yeah, it's correct. Phonetically, it would be Scatha, but of course it is Scota. I think I missed a trick there as well. And as quite a lot of you will know, we did this, Glenn Fabry and I did the story of Scota, witch warrior woman, in a short-lived Sunday newspaper. And there was Brendan McCarthy and Pete Milligan. We're also doing I think it was Summer of Love, their strip. It's just wonderful Brendan McCarthy psychedelic stuff. Fantastic. So we did Scota, and Glenn did a tremendous job on that, and it's been reprinted by Hibernia Books, those wonderful Irish press that cover all the stories that somehow or other sort of slipped under the radar. I should have done something on that. I have missed a trick there. I mean, just to put it in context, Cuchulainn has this encounter. He gets his training. I think it's from Scota, and there's quite a complex story about Cuchulainn and his warrior training, and it's quite amazing. Probably not today, where we're kind of, we've moved on from the 80s, but it was pretty amazing at the time that this warrior woman had trained this, you know, the most powerful and monstrous barbarian ever, Cuchulainn. And I probably should have picked up on that. But once again, I think the muse was not pushing me that way. It was pushing me in other directions. It's a hard thing to describe, because in popular culture, all too often, you're producing what the editor wants, and you kind of bring in your own muse, but in a limited kind of way. And I think that's the downside of popular culture, that if you want to write something really powerful, really good, it has to be a reflection of your personality and your culture. So I mean, I think that's true particularly for Judge Dredd. John Wagner's Judge Dredd is just a joy to read, because it's you know, he's following some muse of his own, especially in those early days, you know, and somehow the muse was steering me away from Scota, which is a bit of a shame. And I kept coming back to it, and eventually on Scota, I did a version of it for France, and the title didn't resonate with the artist, my co-creator, Olivier Ledois, and for him, the right title was Shah, but it was essentially inspired by Scota, even though there was other material coming into it. So the muse is really important, I think. And maybe a lot of writers just take it so much for granted, they don't even acknowledge it, or they just think, oh well, I just sit down one day and start writing. But for me, it's a very separate and powerful force. So I get into that whole thing about the muse in Kiss My Axe. And I think it's important for anyone who's, you know, writing relatively, you know, beginning at writing or whatever, is to get in touch with their muse. So if you're lucky, you might have a poetic muse that just wants to write nice, gentle, happy stories, which, you know, if that's what your muse wants, they'll probably sell. If I tried doing that, they just stiff at the box office. It just be a, you know, my muse wants me to write dangerous, nasty, subversive stories, and hey, you know, it pays the bills, so why not?
Speaking of which, Morgan Spiceman asks, what's your next book?
You know, how different things sell. I mean, for example, we have at the moment, just trying to see if I've got a copy here. I think I have. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's the wrong. Actually, it's the wrong cover. It's the Amazon copy of Spacewalk. But we've got the Newsstand edition of Spacewalk out, and that came out in November, and it's on the newsstand from November, December, January, and then I think it maybe goes into the supermarket. So we want to see how that goes. We want to get an idea. I mean, Spacewalk's done okay for us, and we've been able to pay the artists and all that kind of thing. But how it sells will have a bearing on what I do next. And we won't know that fully until after Christmas. Maybe we'll get some indication beforehand. Yeah, I mean, the whole process does take an awful long while. It might be, I mean, while I've been waiting for that, I've completed Claudia Vampire Knight, which is a 6-issue series for France. And I might, if I'm having to wait for the figures to come in, I might go on and complete Requiem Vampire Knight, which has I think the plan is to have a jumbo-sized final volume. So rather than it running to volume 12 and 13, it would just be volume 12. The artist Olivia Ledoir is busy on other stuff, and I know what that's like. Once you're into something else, it's a real wrench to come back to what you were working on maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But I think pressure from French fans will make a difference. And for English fans, these questions endlessly come up. So just to put it in context, there's a Panini edition, but I think it's out of print now, more or less. And they did 2 volumes at a time of Requiem Vampire Knight, but we have the Kindle digital edition in English, and it does look pretty damn cool on a big screen. Especially if you've got a soundtrack on it, or something when you're looking at it. I mean, Olivia's artwork is incredible. I mean, he is. I'm trying to think of. I mean, he's got to be the premier French SF artist, really. I mean, there's probably a couple of others from an earlier generation that you might say that of, but for what's he in his 40s or something? For his generation, he's got to be the premier artist. I mean, he's just genius.
Okay, question from Juan. I've already read the first 4 chapters of the book, and it's truly fascinating. Why do you think Steve McManus and Robert Smith were not very enthusiastic about Angela's art in the premiere issue? I think her style was very detailed and cool.
Yeah, I think the first 4 chapters probably address some of that. I think that probably the next couple of chapters will reveal a bit more and kind of explain what was going on and the kind of mindset. Now, I actually thought that mindset that kind of ended with their era, and certainly with Rebellion, I think they've been much better on these things, but they're not above reproach. For example, I saw they've got the new Dan Dare collection out, and it's lists all Dave Gibbons and Brian Bolland and more. And I'm thinking, and more? Wait a minute. Bellardinelli is and more? For fuck's sake. He started the damn thing, and there he is and more. So what does that tell you? It tells you that malaise that was around at the time of McManus, there's still it's wrong to call it a fanboy thing, but it's an arrogance, and it's wrong. It's very, very wrong, because it was like pushing aside the foreign artists who didn't matter. Now, Angela wasn't foreign, but it was the same mindset. It was the same dismissal. In her case, as you'll see as I go on into later chapters, it was a male club, and she just didn't fit. And so I go into that further. Listening far too much to fanboys who didn't represent the general readership, that McMahon was the way to go, and the fact that his direction was one that, although I respected Mick's art, and I adore it, I think it's great, it wasn't the direction that I wanted Sláine to go in overall terms, because Sláine for me represented a fantastic universe of where the Celts were incredible. It wasn't mud huts, and he was incredibly handsome, and so on and so forth. All of which Angela brought across so well. So I think they were just committed to that mindset that is provably not what the majority of readers wanted. And as I say, it's kind of goaded me a little today when I saw that Bellardinelli's Dan Dare, which was actually the most popular, he's just in the top line, he's just listed and more. And I thought, fuck, the same attitude is still there by some individuals at Rebellion. You know, in other words, you know, probably it makes commercial sense because, you know, who the hell knows who Bellardinelli is, kind of thing. But the feedback I had in over the last couple of years was, you know, both versions of Dan Dare were loved, Dave Gibbons and Bellardinelli's version. But it was undoubtedly Massimo's version that was the most popular. And I've got no axe to grind in this at all. You know, it's I love both their artwork, but I think truth is the most important thing, and I think that overrides commercial truth. So I'm always very prickly on things like this. And you know, there was a French edition of the early Slaines where it was listed in the credits. It started off with Mick McMahon and I think then Bellardinelli maybe, and then Angela. And you might think I'm being a bit fragile about this, but you know, I really went ballistic over that, and I tore everybody off. And they were all going, oh no, it's a misunderstanding and so on. I hear all that fucking shit all the time, and that's what it is. It's just crap. You've got to fight your corner, and if they know you will, they'll be a little more careful next time. You have to do it. Better to be known as what they call a troublemaker than just put up with crap. And I thought it was wrong to list Angela as the third artist or something.
Right, lots of questions.
Okay.
So let's
I'll keep them a bit briefer now.
Hi, Wooly. Wooly Russell says, is it possible to go into more detail about the High Brazil Sláine adventures you describe in the book?
High Brazil. Yeah, that was one I kicked around, and because it's really calling for something, isn't it? You know, Sláine going to presumably somewhere like South America, because that's obviously where the name High Brazil came from. And there are all these mythical islands beyond Ireland, and Voyage of St. Brendan has covered them. And I read all those, and I thought about them, and I've read a few other mythical voyages, and I really should have done something. But once again, my excuse is the muse was saying, no, that's not for you. Get back to the stuff you're doing. And so yeah, and that would be a really tough one to do. And again, if I was going to do High Brazil, supposing they really changed their tune at Rebellion and said, okay, Pat, we'll pay you 6 weeks development time. High Brazil would be one that at some point I would do, because it would take 6 weeks. You've got to read all these old Irish sagas and, you know, stare out the window for, you know, a couple of days thinking about it all. So yeah, it's another missed trick, like Scortha. But so I kind of miss it in a way. You know, there's always that creative writing challenge. God, it'd be really nice to do something like that. So I'm thinking, yeah, it couldn't be a nautical voyage to High Brazil and all fantastic, you know, be a bit like, I don't know, one of these fantastic islands that you get in 19th century fantasy fiction. So maybe they go out in their Sláine would go out in his sky chariot or something, and something like that would happen. Damn, missed a trick.
Okay, next. Matthew says, Rebellion are releasing a best of Gerry Finley-Day book. Do you see it as a positive conciliatory effort or too little too late?
That's the first I've heard about it. I think it's great that at least it's some acknowledgement, because no, I think it's really good. The best of Gerry Finley-Day. I'm guessing it's, you know, they must include some stories that perhaps haven't really seen the light of day. And it's a real acknowledgement that Gerry was so bloody important. And I know I bang on about this, but as I'm the only person who bangs on about it, I really feel it's important, because he doesn't appear to be as important to many of my peers. And so I repeat my endless mantra here. Gerry started the comic revolution, not me. It was Gerry. He started it with Tammy. Some of the stories back then, which I don't know, may or may not look as cool today as perhaps I'm suggesting, but they were revolutionary in their time. I mean, he was coming up with some astonishing stories like Ella on Easy Street, which was kind of like the loneliness of the long distance runner. The Camp on Candy Island, which was kind of inspired by The Prisoner. No Tears for Molly, which I believe came out slightly ahead of Upstairs Downstairs. Experts may prove me wrong there, but I think there was definitely a suggestion, which I think was erroneous, that Upstairs Downstairs may have had a look at No Tears for Molly. But I don't think that's true, but No Tears for Molly was astonishing. It was, and my all-time favorite, which probably I don't think will ever get reprinted because it's probably very politically incorrect for today's woke audience, and that is Slaves of War Orphan Farm, which was created by Gerry and Ian MacDonald and featured the evil Ma Thatcher. Not so much from Gerry, who I think is probably a little bit more of a Tory, but Ian MacDonald, who's typically Scottish left wing. And, you know, in those days, Thatcher was, you know, she was still at the milk snatcher stage, but Ian knew where it was going. And anyway, Slaves of War Orphan Farm was barbaric, and John Wagner and I would look at it and think, fuck, what are they doing here? It was just amazing stuff. So Gerry really needs all the praise, all the homage, and all the recognition he can get. So I'm really delighted that Rebellion are acknowledging it. For whatever reason, it's great. Good for Gerry.
Okay, another one from Wooly. How did 2000 AD editorial feel about you killing Sláine in Demon Killer? Did they try to interfere with the direction of the strip after Horned God was such a success?
No, I don't think so, because I'm trying to remember the exact details, but I don't think he died as such. He travelled in time. I'm probably not picking up on necessarily the right. I mean, after Horned God, he starts to travel back in time, but a necessary part of that is that he has to die, and he travels back through time, and you have these historical adventures, which were largely pretty damn successful. As I relate in Kiss My Axe, that period came to an end when Dave Bishop wanted him to go back to his tribe. And that's a little bit different to Judge Dredd going back to Megacity, because Sláine is a rebel. He's not that comfortable with being a High King. I mean, you look at him when he is, you know, High King. He's got a very casual attitude towards authority, which probably reflects my own persona, perhaps. And so it doesn't really work for him. At that point, at the end of the historical adventures, that there was editorial, what should we say, interference. The only other editorial interference was Sláine was doing so well commercially that they wanted it in the comic all the time. And that's why, if you look at the Clint Langley period, the painted artwork had been an endless nightmare. You had Greg Staples did a brilliant job, but very short-lived, on the early kind of Robin Hood historical stories. And so it came back with Clint, and it came back as line and colour, because Steve McManus wanted it in the comic all the time. And so that was the only real interference that I can remember, because I remember Clint and I were a little bit uneasy about it because it involved having a colorist. It was line and color. And then I think eventually Clint took over the colouring himself.
Okay, Jim Taylor, if Spacewalk turned out to be a massive success and you decided to resurrect Sláine, could you just do that, or would Rebellion have a say in that? I wonder.
Yeah, I wish, yeah. No, Rebellion own all rights to everything. You know, they don't actually own my soul, but they'd probably like to, but they don't own that, no. Sláine could not feature there.
And that's why we don't have any Sláine art in the book.
Yeah. I'm sure that if I said to Rebellion, do you mind if we have some artwork in here? They'd probably say, yeah, that would be okay. But that would be a problem. You imagine, once you start putting artwork in, where are you going to stop? You know, I don't want to owe them any favors in any way because I need to keep my position, which is fairly well known.
Okay, and one from Phil Vaughan. Hello, Phil. Was there ever anything that caught your interest in Nordic and or Slavic mythologies that may have intrigued your muse?
There was a kind of only in a negative way, which is actually quite important to the whole depiction of the Celtic mythology, because Nordic myths are an easy ride. Germanic stories are easy by comparison with Celtic myths. And that's why, well, there's a big story behind that, which I should go into a little bit, although I know Lisa's going to say move on to the next question, but so I'll speed this up. But it goes something like this, that that's why you'll see adaptations of Beowulf, because it's fucking easy. But you get onto Celtic myths, they are not easy. I don't know enough about Slavic myths to really say. I did get into it a little bit round the edges, but I can't really speak authoritatively on that subject. But you know, you look at any Viking saga or German sagas, they're all ordered and structured. You know, people begin at one end and they end at the other end. You know already what I'm going to say, that Celtic myths are not like that. They're all over the fucking place. They're incredible. They're beautiful. And I don't know how far that reflects modern Irish character. I don't live in Ireland, so I can't, but I have a feeling there's an element of that, you know. All I can say is that, as I relate in the book, Sláine led to Clint and I doing the story of Cuchulainn for Irish Film Board. So I wrote the screenplay, and the guy at the Irish Film Board said to me, I think I was sitting in his office, and he said, you know, we've got a shelf of past screenplays of Cuchulainn before yours. You know, there's all these previous attempts to try and encapsulate this great hero. I mean, you think by comparison, you've got every 5 years or whatever, there's another King Arthur story, right? No Cuchulainn, and it's a long story, so I'm not going to get into it. But so mine joined all the others on the shelf, yeah, it's all part of that Irish character. That's yeah, it's not so easy to pin down as German stories. Okay.
Steve Greenaway, would you or could you touch on the Troubles in comics?
I never have. The nearest I got to it was in Crisis, and I did a we went to some lengths to make sure the story was safe from every point of view. But I think we did say some things that perhaps hadn't been said before. And I remember, I can't remember what was in that story with Malachi, probably it was, or if not, it was maybe in Finn. But Finn had a military background. In Northern Ireland, and had a lot to say that the media had not covered, and he'd had some very bad experiences with the British Army. You know, where I think he kind of challenged them in some way. So he didn't go to the glass house in Colchester. They had the equivalent of it in border country. You know, that doesn't bear thinking about, really, that they and then, you know, these are you know, right on the border and right in the middle of the Troubles, and he'd be telling me stories about this. It's a very, very dangerous time, and so that comes into Finn's background. Probably too complex to get into right now, but yeah, I was pleased to cover that. I think it was important to do so.
I'm not sure, but I think the signal does keep dropping out, so I'm really sorry to everybody if it's really distracting to watch.
Yeah, it says at the moment on my machine the current frame rate is too low. Please set the frame rate to 15 something IPS. I have no idea what that means.
Can you?
Shall I?
Is there something to change?
It says action needed.
Oh, well, then,
God,
then we certainly should.
Sorry about this, everybody. It's
Right. Okay, let me get in there.
Yeah. Okay. Let me move out of the way. Right. So we're gonna make some running changes here.
All right. How do I do that? Learn more.
Learn more. That doesn't sound like.
How do I set the frame rate?
Is it really bad?
I think it does keep dropping out.
Right.
No. So learn more. If anyone can tell me how to change the frame rate.
Right. We're sort of right. Maybe you have a look at that on your laptop and come back to this.
Yeah.
So if you have a read of that there, and I'll burble on about something else in the meantime. Yeah.
Hang on, I've got settings here. Is it in there? Stream.
Right. Not very user-friendly, is it?
It's not intuitive at all, is it? Sorry, guys. Let me carry on then.
Okay. All right. Right. Such is the way of things. Okay.
Okay. Willie Russell, with the second Accident Man movie shooting now, have you considered reviving the comic? Who would draw it?
We could revive the comic. That's a good question. Who would draw it? Titan Books do the book collection, and I think they just dropped it out. So we'd have to do it in some other way. And I think I've got so many other things on the go that you know, I think Spacewalk has to take priority, really. But I would love to do another story with Tony Skinner. We had a great time writing Accident Man together. We did one story which never got completed in the end. We were going to do it for the Titan collection, and I think the artist just didn't complete it. But it involved Accident Man having a pit bull terrier, and knowing that, and having what was it? Some guy had a particular aftershave which the pit bull terrier would take extreme exception to, and go after. So that would have been a good story, and we did talk about it. So theoretically, we could carry on. I'm assuming you can still hear me, so I'm going to talk. Oh yeah, I can. We're still down there in the bottom right-hand corner.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
Thanks, Matthew, for click video frame rate. I'm trying to see that now. Patrick thinks I'm a real techie.
Because I came across some other artwork from the very early days of 2000 AD. In fact, I'm going to tease you a bit here. These pages I don't think have ever been seen anywhere, and they are very, very much, what shall we say, classic 2000 AD material. And they've been in my loft as well for 30 odd years, and actually longer than that, my God. So we're gonna save that for another one, and I'm just going to tease you about it now. But hopefully, by the time we do this second Facebook Live, we will have solved the techno problems. And I'm just realising, looking at the time, that it's possible that Doctor Who fans will have perhaps joined the Facebook Live. So hello everyone, and I'm glad you've joined us. You've missed out on all the free prizes that we were giving away to everyone in the first half. You know, there was all these gifts we were giving out, but never mind. We're still here. So I hope the final episode, was it the final episode of Doctor Who? I hope it was good. Was worth watching. So, any more questions?
Right. Yes. There are loads of questions, and I'm just dicking around on here and trying to make things work properly. Bear with me.
Well, while you're doing that, I will mention for new readers, for people who've just joined us, just all the kind of data on Kiss My Axe. So here we are, just seeing the small screen. Yeah, here we are. Okay, so this is the paperback from Amazon, and it's $11.99. And then there's the Kindle edition, which is $4.99. There's the Get My Comics paperback edition, which is like this, and it's $11.99. And there's also the signed edition. Let me see if I can get that up on the screen. It's got this tiny little screen now. All right, there we are.
Yeah, but your camera's still in the same place.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Camera hasn't moved.
Right, thank you. Okay,
so your camera isn't down there in the corner.
It just feels to me like it is. Yeah. Okay, so we got the special signed edition from Get My Comics, and that is $14.99, and that was meant there were pre-orders on that, lots of pre-orders, and that was meant to go out at the end of November, and surprise, surprise, the printer's screwed up. And the ETA seems somewhere around mid-December now. So humble apologies to everyone that's happened. And as a way of, as a compensation, there's a free online edition, which you'll have been emailed about if you pre-ordered, from the Cove. And the online edition actually is really nice. It's it's sort of different to a PDF. The pages flick over in a very satisfying way. So hopefully that will make up for things. Okay.
Okay. So there was some advice from Robert Carpenter, who said if you ask everyone to leave and then come back in again, sometimes it unjams the signal.
But I thought the problem was at our end,
Yeah,
rather than the viewers' end.
I know. I don't know.
Yeah. What can I say? I'm
want,
bottom of the class.
Do you all want to bugger off and then come back again?
No. That's that sounds very strange. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Let me see. Kieran O'Gorman again. Charlie's War. Did you ever consider Charlie being transferred to Ireland after World War One and being caught up in the War of Independence and the Civil War?
That's a really nice thought, isn't it? It would have been very tough. I think when Charlie's War came out, I don't think there was that much information about what was happening, and it would also be a devastatingly tough story to do, wouldn't it? Because he's got to come across as sympathetic, and I mean, if you think of the wind that shakes the barley, I mean, fantastic film. To find a way whereby Charlie could be sympathetic in an era of the black and tans and everything would be, my God, that would be so tough. You know, I mean, I grew up in Irish households where, you know, the words black and tans were you know, repeated like a curse, and, you know, with good reason. So I think I settled for the Russian story, and I was lucky to find information about what the British got up to in Russia. Since then, I found out a lot more, and it was far, far worse. It was Britain's Vietnam, and just like the Americans in Vietnam, the British Army behaved disgracefully. What a surprise! All armies behave disgracefully. It's what they do. But they behaved even worse than how I portrayed it in Charlie's War. But I only found that out relatively recently. If you go to, anyone who's interested, you go to John S. Clarke's Wikipedia entry, there's a reference to his travels in Russia, and which is free and available online, and it's absolutely horrific, the role of the British Army. But, you know, editorial would have stopped me. I mean, they were starting to resist, and I would put up with some of their crap because I thought, as long as I can get the story of the British invasion of Russia, if I can do that story, I'll put up with a certain amount of editorial interference. So, for example, I think it's well known now that they said that they censored me on Charlie supporting black American soldiers against what were American Ku Klux Klan. I mean, which is, you know, very typical and very archetypal. And Terry McGee's words were to me, we don't want to offend anyone. I mean, who the fuck are we going to offend, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's still, and I remember at the time really choking on it and thinking, put up with it, because you've got the British invasion of Russia coming up. I knew that was like maybe a year away. And I thought, yeah, just keep going. And I think it was the right decision. So could you imagine what their reaction would be like if I said, hey, we're going to show Charlie in the Irish War of Independence? It's like, oh my God, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Okay.
Right. Let me see. There was some other ones here. Gosh, I'm going back now. Just a comment there from Robert Carpenter. I know Brian Freeland, Seamus Heaney, who got Nobel for Beowulf. Don't know why myself, lol. Benjamin Patterson. I'd love to know how Pat thinks of Third World War and Finn now.
Well, I love both. Finn, I'm told by Rebellion, I think it's going to come out next year. I've kind of lost track because they always keep saying next year. And I think it genuinely is going to come out next year. And if that's so, that puts paid to my conspiracy theories, doesn't it? That there's, you know, some bit of Freemasonry objections there. Because, you know, for a while I really thought, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, just to remind people who aren't aware of it, Finn was at a particular point in 2000 AD, somewhere in the Dave Bishop era. It was more popular than Sláine. It was incredibly popular, and it has not been reprinted in book form. It's only been reprinted in comic form, and there has to be a reason for that. And Rebellion are pretty good at being close-lit, so you can believe their version. I don't know if they've got a version, just haven't gotten around to it. Well, if you believe that, fair enough. I don't, personally. I think there is a reason, and I think they're better at keeping it to themselves. But supposedly, we're going to see it next year. And I suppose that makes up for it, because Finn is not only close to my heart, but very, very close to my dear friend Tony Skinner. And we were talking about this on Skype the other day, and he was saying how he was really looking forward to seeing it, because it's a little bit of a reflection of his own lifestyle. Not that close, I hasten to add, but all really good stories have a strong element of reality and personal experience built into them, and Finn has that. There's more I could add on that subject, but I probably should move on to the next.
Unfortunately, I seem to lose a load of comments.
I'm sorry, guys.
Because I think we haven't already done this one, have we? I think it was Wooly was saying, would you consider writing more Accident Man?
Yeah, you asked that one. Yeah.
Sorry about that. And Steve Greenaway says, can this go on all night?
No. We're going to wrap up. We're giving the Doctor Who fans a chance to come in with any questions, but we should wrap up.
Okay, Morgan Spiceman, who's your favourite Sláine artist? Ooh, controversial. Is there any American artist you wished had worked on Sláine?
I can't think of one. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have that's a hard one. I think, again, I'll just show this page for anybody who's just joined. Right, I'm holding out in the general direction of the screen and hoping it appears there. I think it would have to be Angela Kincaid, because we came up with the story together. And it's one of the things that and this is obviously her very first version of Akko the Dwarf, and he's just fantastic, and that's what inspired that caption, would you buy a used chariot from this dwarf? And that wonderful way the Droon Lord's leaning into him and looking on, and all this looks pretty obvious now after 40 years, but Christ, 40 years, but we were really starting out with a blank canvas, and I think for Angela to have done that is a huge achievement. And I think because she was so blindsided by 2000 AD editorial, I have to champion her version in particular, even though from a commercial and other criteria point of view, you've got Bisley's fantastic painted version, you've got Glenn Fabry, pretty handsome, but fuck, Glenn's version, he's a rock star. And then you've got so many others that all these brilliant Sláine artists. You think, yeah, Leo's okay too. No, Leo's brilliant as well. Let's and he's an incredibly humble artist as well, but great guy and so committed to Sláine. And I think it broke a little bit of his heart when I said to him, "Look, Leo, I'm not going to do any more." And so I wouldn't say I feel guilty about that, because it was the right decision, but I do feel sad about it. I mean, he did things that I don't know that anyone else could have quite managed as successfully as him. The idea of Sláine is moving so fast that he leaves behind these limbs at different angles that I feature for the first time in Sláine. You know, in other words, this idea that he's just so quick, and that's a really hard thing to draw, and he draws it so effortlessly and so beautifully that, you know, he's up there with all the other superstars, isn't he? You know, he really is. I really hope, I don't know how these things are measured these days or how they're acknowledged, but if there's any way of measuring it or letting him know how important he is. I mean, I tell him, but, you know, he might see me as being a bit partisan. I mean, fantastic artist, absolutely fantastic.
Next question, Jim Taylor. Which artist captured the warp spasm best in your view? I'm not asking who's the best artist, but whose vision was closest to your imagination?
Well, we all know the answer to that, don't we? And that is Bellardinelli. But I happen to have here this wonderful page of David Pugh's warp spasm, which is a pretty damn close second, isn't it? I mean, you know.
Let's try and get that. Let's
Yeah.
go back a little bit.
Okay. I don't know what David was on at the time, but this is just absolutely astonishing. I mean, he just ran with the ball there, and I think that's just so exciting to see that. But
Just try and
okay.
get in a little closer.
It's no, it's absolutely fabulous. But despite it being that fabulous, and of course, one of the reasons it is that fabulous is because David was inspired by my account, which comes from the Celtic account of the Battle of Clontarf, which I think was designed to be told around the fireside. And I talk about it a bit in Kiss My Axe. But I think it was almost like, I think the original way these stories were told, where they were designed to be told around the fireside. And I think David really picked up with that and ran with it. So although you could say he was inspired by my account really came from the original storytellers, you know, and it was kind of synthesized by the monks. And this is a story that bears repeating, that the monks said in this account, I have, you know, you could imagine this, you know, po-faced monk as he wrote something like, I believe some of these stories to be true, some of them to be devilish lies, and some of them are for the enjoyment of idiots, something like that. I thought, hey, he's got my number. In other words, the Christian church obviously had a real problem with all those stories of warp spasms and things. But to come back to your question, it's got to be Massimo Bellardinelli. I mean, everyone would accept that. I mean, there's been some wonderful versions later by, you know, lots of brilliant artists, but including Simon Davis. I mean, he went out on a limb even further. But I mean, it was extraordinary what he did. I mean, I remember looking at it and thinking, Jesus Christ, what is this? You know, it was really taking us in some new direction. And that really does need acknowledging. But at the end of the day, I think we're all of us going to vote for Massimo, aren't we? I mean, if Angela had carried on with the story, I don't think I would have asked her yeah, maybe we did talk about the warp spasm, but, you know, the story never got that far. So there were references to it, I think, in episode 1, but no, we didn't go that far.
Right, I've got a question here from Ed Doyle.
Yeah.
Hi Pat, when is Spacewalk 2 coming out?
Ah.
And have you been reading any other indie titles at the Mo?
Well, number 2 obviously comes out once we got the sort of final sales figures on Spacewalk 1. I mean, it's worked, and we, as I say, we've been able to pay the artists, and we've got. I mean, that's the toughest bloody job, especially for both of us, Lisa and I. We're both creatives, and having to do fucking spreadsheets with, right, we've got this money in from here, and so on. It's a job that neither of us actually particularly enjoy. There's no accountants in our family, surprise, surprise. But anyway, we've got to add up all the figures and see how it works. And depending on how that goes, we will then move on to Spacewalk 2. But in one form or another, I mean, you know, we're heavily invested in those characters. So it has to, you know, come back. I'm in love with all the characters and all the artists' work. And they all, you know, it's absolutely right that it carries on. But you know, there's a long tradition in British comic art of everyone being incredibly slow. Yeah, I mean, what is it about comics? I mean, why are we all so fucking slow? I don't know. I mean, you have movies. There's Accident Man 1, Accident Man 2 out in the last 3 or 4 years or something. But in British comics, everything is so painfully slow. But as long as there are others who are even slower than we are, I feel protected. So, for example, we have Simon Bisley on Joe Pineapples. I mean, what is that? That's like 7 or 8 years now. Clint's taken it over, and Simon.
That's another 7 years then.
Don't say that. Don't say that, please. No. He. The last I heard was it was definitely Clint was hoping to finish by Christmas. And if you want to take bets on that, you're not. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to buy into that. But yeah, his heart's in the right place, and he's doing a great job on it. But we are all horribly slow. What more can I say? It's how it is. Yeah.
Okay. Morgan, who asked one earlier and I lost it. What do you think of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey? Did you use it in Sláine?
Not the hero's journey. I did the hero with 1,000 faith. Is it a hero with 1,000 faith? No, it was another book by Joseph Campbell, which I did use in the very early stages of Sláine. Had a different title altogether, which I can't remember, but it featured the Cave of the Three Brothers with my atrocious French Les Trois Frères, something like that. And I used that for Slaugfeg because it's this amazing cathedral from Neolithic times. And that so inspired me on Slaugfeg. In terms of the archetypes, I have read The Hero's Journey. I think I read I think there was a period where Hollywood sort of got hold of Joseph Campbell and they synthesized it in that way that only Hollywood can. And they thought, right, we can, you know, maybe we can automate our script writers or something. And so they did The Hero's Journey, which goes into all the different processes. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I should read this. And I think it was useful up to a point. But they are right. Campbell is right about all the different archetypes. And George Lucas obviously was way ahead of the rest of us in terms of making it work in terms of the hero's journey in Star Wars. Now, I think I've actually done it in reverse, which is typical of me, in Requiem Vampire Knight, where it's a kind of dark hero's journey, which actually nobody seems to have picked up on. So I featured all the kind of things that, you know, the kind of, for example, you know, in Star Wars, you have Ben Kenobi, and then you have that little guy whose name I can't remember.
Yoda?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. so I have the equivalent of him in Requiem. So it's a kind of dark version of Joseph Campbell's archetypes in Requiem Vampire Knight.
Last few questions.
Yeah.
Okay, Morgan again. Which one of your stories would you most like to be made into a movie? Well, I think maybe one that you own outright.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Absolutely, yes. Lisa's answered that perfectly for me. Marshal Law came close, where it was actually seriously considered by Warner Brothers, and you know, it got up to the boardroom at Warner Brothers, and it was round about the time that Watchmen was about to come out, and possibly for that reason, or perhaps for other reasons, it died the death. And yeah, you would think maybe with The Boys and other things coming out from Netflix that Martial Law would happen, but I think it's too fucking subversive. I think I think the days when I was better at hiding this are gone. I've come out of the closet. I'm fucked, really. So what can you say? Yeah.
Right. Let me see. We have one from Jim Taylor. In The Horned God, you referenced the books of invasions. Was that just confidence that 6 collections later you would still be doing Sláine?
Yeah. People often say about the longevity of not just Sláine, but 2000 AD. How could you be sure about that? For example, in the case of 2000 AD, I remember saying to the publisher, John Sanders, who put forward the title 2000 AD, I think we probably had some crappy kind of Space Nova type title instead. And I said, well, what happens in 2000 AD? You know, when we run out. We've run out. And he looked at me like, yeah, do you really think 2000 AD is going to be running in the millennium? And of course, it's 20 years on from there and still going strong. So I think it's the same with Sláine. I certainly designed the comics I've been connected with and the characters I've been connected with for a very long life indeed. I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, there probably are some characters who perhaps have a shorter shelf life, but I can't think of any of my characters in particular that would apply to.
Oh, actually, there was a question that I lost, and I've just remembered. Somebody asked why there are very few classic enduring tales in 2000 AD. Why is it so hard to create a classic?
What, today, you mean?
Well, perhaps in all the history of 2000 AD, I assume, as in Sláine is a classic, but
there's there are other classics. There's Judge Dredd, the Strontium Dog, there's Rogue Trooper. The reason, and I'm just banging an old drum here, so I know some of you are going to turn off, but I have to repeat it. It's because the original creators, they're the ones with the driven by the muse. So, Gerry's Rogue Trooper, whatever its faults, and the critics are out there to slag him off, but those are the Rogue Troopers that are most fondly remembered. And so the reason why some stories have not gone on to be classics is perhaps because it hasn't been worth the creator's while, or they've been pushed to one side. I would say, yeah, that's got to be the explanation.
Okay, Steve Ritson, how about a Sláine RPG or war game? Now, did you not touch on RPGs in Kiss My Axe?
I have indeed. Yeah, there's some kind of tabletop system, and I think I cover it in Kiss My Axe, where let me see. I can't remember the name of the company. I think they've already done a tabletop thing on Judge Dredd. So, I mean, what really seems to happen is that the classic characters, ABC Warriors, because I think they're doing one up there as well. Sláine, Judge Dredd, Strontium Dog, and Rogue Trooper. That 5 seem to be the main ones. And I suppose it's a little bit like Marvel. You have these kind of classic characters from the past, Spider-Man, X-Men, and so on. But they do add to them. And I don't think that's happened as successfully on 2000 AD because the cash incentives aren't there. So you've got to find someone who's really hungry to, as John Wagner and I were back in the day, to create these classics, because they sure as fuck aren't going to make it worth your while in copyright or financial terms.
Okay, Philip, will you be attending any comic events?
Well, you know the answer to that as well. With every day you look at you can't get into Britain unless you've got this or that or the other, and then you can't get back into Spain unless you've got this, that, and the other. And Christ, I mean, it just seems to get more and more crazy. I got to really get back to the UK at some point, but I feel kind of a little bit marooned at the moment. But as and when we do, we've got to focus on some kind of comic convention. But of course, the comic conventions aren't really fully up to speed, as at least that's my understanding. I mean, I think there was Thought Bubble a little while back, and doubtless there are others. But we haven't got back to those pre-COVID days yet. I think maybe that has to happen.
I think that's pretty much it. We do have a one from Wally Russell, which I don't think is a serious question.
Go on.
Would you consider adapting your experiences in the comic industry into a bawdy Confessions of a Window Cleaner style screenplay?
Well, I've kind of adapted it into a bawdy Read 'em and Weep story with Kevin O'Neill, serial killer, and all that kind of stuff. Good Night, John Boy, just looking at the next title in the series, and the next one I have to write. So there's a kind of, there is a lot of comedy in all these things. And so I've kind of pursued that a bit. And I think there is more potential. And I've got to sit down and write the 3rd chapter. Because it's also whodunit, so it's not fair to leave readers stranded on that.
Yeah, some people are giving up hope that they're ever going to find out who done it.
Oh shit!
That's it. Have another slurp of wine.
Yeah, I'd better go, because if I drink much more, I shall start. You've probably noticed the level of swearing and so on has increased. And
a bit flushed there.
That's just Facebook and the poor digital reproduction. It's not real in any way.
So are we?
Well, I think we're done.
I think we're done. Apologies about the streaming. I'll try and get better at that. We will put it up on our YouTube video channel, so you can always skip through and find the bits that were getting stuck. I'll probably put that up tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks so much for everybody for tuning into this. And as Lisa says, we will try and get better next time. Whatever went wrong this time, we'll try and put right. Because when we do a second one, we're going to focus on, as I say, this astonishing artwork relevant to the very beginning of 2000 AD that you will not have seen before. So that's deliberately designed to tease you, and you will not be disappointed when I show you this artwork that's been lurking in my loft for a lifetime. So Christ, but I think you'll be very impressed when you see it. So on that note, I will say thanks again to everyone. Thank you, and Sláinte, and farewell. Bye for now. Bye.